go in to have surgery, and they don't get any type of free surgical treatment or nutritional background or nutritional substance to help them with this, help them after the surgery. And when they have the surgery, they are in the hospital for 2 or 3 days with IV fluids with electrolytes. No nutrition or anything. And so that started me keeping my eye open, and that's one of the things that I started doing with children. What are we doing? And I worked in the ICU when I got to Georgetown, and literally you could have people, not even kids, just grown people in the ICU starving to death because they're not getting their basic metabolic needs. And so I, kind of like started making some complaints about it, and then the nutrition was part of the rounds. When the doctors had their rounds, that was a part of what were they getting. How much nitrogen and everything was they getting? That's the protein. And so that was one of the things that that pretty much I'm known for. When you go to Georgetown and ask about my name, they'll talk about the kids and the nutrition. But it's so important, when you're planning surgery, is to kind of beef your body up before you go in. You increase your vitamin C, you increase your zinc, you increase your protein. All of these things help tissue healing.
So that's because most of the time after you come out of surgery, you're just getting liquids. You're
just getting liquids. The one thing I did request when my mom had surgery was for him to start her on TPN. Because I knew she was behind the 8 ball when she had one going in, and I had done everything I could to get her the nutrients that she needed. But the doctor did honor that request for me, that he started her on TPN so she can get nutrients. And that would help her body healing. But that's important, anytime anybody's sick, because you got to be in the bed. You are depleted before you get there anyway. So I would say if anybody have any elective surgery, they should think about the kind of foods that they're going to eat that's going to help tissue healing later.
You know what? I'm as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm learning that most people are not even aware of that.
They're not,
They're not even aware that their body really need more substance for the tissue healing than what's getting from that liquid that's coming out of their bottle.
Yes, that's true.
You mentioned Georgetown University. You mentioned North Carolina A&T. What other, what we might call prestigious colleges or universities that you attended to prepare you for your nursing career?
The first one was Gardner-Webb. That's why I had my... Yeah, Gardner-Webb. I went into nursing there. That was my first. I had an associate degree from Gardner-Webb. And after working 2 years in the hospital that I worked was in Morganton, North Carolina, Grace Hospital. I moved on to Greensboro, and I just worked in one of the local hospitals there. And after I went back to A&T, and I graduated with my bachelor's, I moved on up to D.C. to Georgetown. And in 95, I got downsized out of my job, worked agency, so I got to go to all of the hospitals there, and mainly worked at children in D.C., and then I signed on in 2010, and then I retired from there in 2016.
When did you finally get into your specialty, pediatrics?
After I graduated from A&T, that's when I was really started out in peds. I didn't start out in peds. I didn't pass peds on my boards, that first time. So I took that again, and I went to peds and worked with peds, and that was my niche. It's amazing how God can direct your path. Some people see them as failures. Is just a stepping stone for you to do better, and that's what I looked at it as, and that's where my niche was. That's what I enjoyed doing, and still to this day it was all in my bones. Love working with the kids, love working with the families, and giving their parents support and letting them know that they can take care of their child. After a catastrophic event happens. So the main thing was actually working with the families. And getting that parent to feel confident enough to take care of their child at home.
Let's go back a little bit when you was coming up, and your mother was a what?
Mom was a nurse, and
what she do with
She worked in the hospital. Well, I remember when I was a little girl, she was working. And this is the era when the nurse's uniform, she took her uniforms to the cleaners and they were starched. They could stand up in the corner by themselves. And I always said I wanted to be a nurse because I liked her when she walked out with her little white starchy uniforms on. And she was a midwife.
Oh, that's what I wanted to hone in on. Your connection in pediatrics and your mom as a midwife. Connect them two for us.
Those two, I can say, she delivered the babies, but I would take care of them. I didn't want no parts of delivery. I would take care of them all day long, but not part of delivery, you know. Mm-hmm. And I worked out when I got to D.C., after we got downsized, I worked in one of the hospitals in their little neonatal. It was a special care nursery at the time, but it eventually evolved to a neonatal intensive care nursery. And I worked there, and it was just like wonderful. You know, working with the newborns is good, but see, my biggest thing was I was working with the sick children, and then as well with the newborns. And you know, I liked them both. They both were really great.
Yeah, I want to say I really didn't know you until I heard about you when you spoke at Antioch some while back.
Oh, yes.
On a program for the I think it's
Women's Conference.
Women's Conference. Then I said, who is Miss Munnerlyn? Then I get to checking into my history. Then I find out me, your mother, my mother was friend with your mother, and your mother was one of them ladies that helped Mr. Cunningham during the civil rights era. All they would get together and cook and get stuff prepared for him to hit the road, and so to have money in his pocket. And I said, that's the mother. And I didn't realize until later on when I saw it. I said, that's her daughter.
Yes.
But I am happy to meet you. And when I saw your post on Facebook about 40 years in nursing, I said, I have got to talk to her. Somebody has spent 40 years as a nurse taking care of people and making sure they're healthy. Give us some of the experiences you had that really impact your life so far as your treatment and your interaction with moms and their children in pediatrics.
I want to one little sad note on this whole thing is that during the first 2 years when I was in this in Morganton, I had my first child to die on me, and I just went home that night and I just sit and stared at the walls. You know, we did everything we could do, and this is again when. Germs and bacteria, viruses and things get into the body. You know, they destroy more than, like to say, this child had what we call the vomiting and diarrhea, okay? It was caused by a virus. We now know that the virus name is rotavirus, okay? I learned to kind of clock these things when the time of the year that these would happen. And rotavirus that we see, the vomiting diarrhea usually hits from February to March. That's what I noticed about that. And it's still to this day. You know, some people call it norovirus, I guess, when it gets to the adults or whatever. But pretty much the same stomach virus. Well, this virus got into this child's heart muscle and destroyed it. And the doctor called me. I was at work that evening. He called me and told me he was sending her in and that he had seen her in the office early that morning. And he told me what to do for her. And I did it all, and I called him. I told him, I said, she looks pretty bad. And pretty much, she was probably hadn't stopped breathing. Looking back on that now, she was already acidotic when she got there. Her skin was kind of ashen, so, you know, just kind of pretty much death won over. So I got everything done. And it just so happened the evening supervisor came around, and he was getting ready to come to the hospital after I called him. And she came in. The supervisor always come in and check on you and see what's going on. And so she walked into the room, and I was telling her about the child, and this child took her last breath while she was there. And we, you know, did the emergency coding and stuff like that. But it wasn't till a bill. And the doctor later told me, he came in that night and they did a post on it that night. Mm-hmm. And he said that the virus had gotten into her heart muscle. And so her muscle her heart was just as flabby. And later on, about maybe a week or so later, he put me to the side and he said to me, I want you to know that no matter what you would have done for that child, she was going to die anyway, because the virus had destroyed her heart. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that after then, he said he wasn't going to look at your common vomiting and diarrhea the same anymore, because, this child had died. And so it's just one of the experiences that I had, and it's like I sit at home that night and just stared at the four corners. Mm-hmm. And, we kind of got over that and stuff. But the nutrition class that we took was taught to us by a biochemist. Mm-hmm. And we had to track everything went in our mouths for 24 hours. Mm-hmm. Then we had to track it for 3 days, just to see how many nutrients you did or did not get from the food that you ate. Mm-hmm. And that was an eye-opener for me. Mm-hmm. And this professor brought out one thing to me, and I watched it when I got back into the hospitals. Mm-hmm. I went to school while I was working. Mm-hmm. He said something very important to me. He said that a patient go in to have surgery, and they don't get any type of free surgical treatment or nutritional background or nutritional substance to help them with this, help them after the surgery. Mm-hmm. And when they have the surgery, they are in the hospital for 2 or 3 days with IV fluids with electrolytes. Mm-hmm. No nutrition or anything. Mm-hmm. And so that started me keeping my eye open, and that's one of the things that I started doing with children. Mm-hmm. What are we doing? And I worked in the ICU when I got to Georgetown. And literally, you could have people, not even kids, just grown people in the ICU starving. No nutrition or anything. Mm-hmm. And so that started me keeping my eye open, and that's one of the things that I started doing with children. Mm-hmm. What are we doing? And I worked in the ICU. When I got to Georgetown, I started paying close attention to the nutrition that the children were getting, and especially when they were scheduled for surgery and having big-time surgery. I did notice a situation where this child was 4 years old, came in to have surgery, and didn't heal for a long time. I mean, the body almost just shut down. And I didn't get involved in the case right away. I went on vacation for 2 weeks and came back, and then I was assigned to this child. And it was said to me that this child was now on 30 calories of Prosobi. And I'm thinking, this child was 4 years old. What is this child doing on Prosobi? That's an infant formula. So I actually went and made a big stink with the physicians and everything and said, this child is 4 years old. If this child has been on Prosobi for 4 years, she has not gotten the nutrients that her body requires. And that's one of the reasons why she's not healing. And they started looking back at that, and they changed the situation with her nutrition, and voila, she healed and was able to be discharged to home. So a lot of times when kids are chronic, the nutrition tend to be one of the things that's overlooked. We had kids, started a cardiac open heart surgery service. Mm. And the one thing that I kind of noticed that, we have to keep up on the nutrition, especially when you have a child that's sick or chronic. Mm-hmm. You have to optimize their nutrition. This little girl came in, 4 years old, mm-hmm. had a real complex cardiac problem. And they did surgery on her, and she just didn't heal well or anything like that. And I never got involved because everybody else wanted to take care of these sick kids, Mm-hmm. I went on vacation. She had been there like maybe almost a month. I went on vacation and came back. And I was getting a report. And the nurse that was giving me a report said, She is now on Prosobi, 30 calories.
Mm-hmm.
I went ballistic. I stopped reporting.